Awesome. Well, Adrian, obviously it's a great opportunity to connect with you again.
Yeah, man.
And I really genuinely appreciate, like I said, when we're not recording, just the time right now and gaining more of wisdom of the journey and the path that you've been through, that you've walked through these last 5, 6 years. Um, and obviously this is an opportunity for me to learn from you, and you're somebody that I respect. You're somebody that
Mm.
I have a lot of admiration. Somebody that
Same.
I look at you, and I'm like, man, I'm really encouraged by some of the choices that you've made, some of the um, decisions that you've taken, but also the stance that you have, and especially as a father, that's one of the biggest things right now that I'm really encouraged by you, is just how you're stepping into the life of your children,
Yeah.
and the way that that's happening. So obviously the context I've shared a little bit, but the context of this call is just, man, like what are some of the things that you have walked through in the process of divorce, and as a father and as a man, that you could shed some insight, some light. We'll be just kind of playing ping pong here and just
Sure.
dialogue. But yeah, if you don't mind just kind of giving us a little recap of just what you went through and how you found yourself at the footsteps of divorce.
Sure. Well, been divorced twice. So I'll share all my failings and hopefully something great can come of it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even, I joke with the word failings. I don't take either of them that way.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Now, because why? Because why? What's the strategy and beating yourself up about something? Number one. Number two is I learned so much and got so much out of both relationships, um, that I'm grateful. So, um, let's see. You want me to cover? How do you want me to begin?
Yeah, no, just I mean, if you don't mind just kind of sharing a little bit of like, hey, this is where I was, this is what happened,
Sure,
obviously, as comfortable as you are sharing. Um,
sure. I
and
can.
yeah,
Yeah, great. And feel free. I'm an open book, so ask any questions that you think would be helpful.
awesome.
Let's see. Let's see. So first marriage, got married in 2008. Interesting phase in life. I was out in LA for a couple years at that stage. And a full life, big, we knew each other from that phase of life. So your big community, was in service, worked in Christian ministry at the time. I was running around building community on college campuses, and had then, I think at that stage, had transitioned into was a big passion of mine, which was mobilizing people to go out and make a difference. Either if it was scooping food at a shelter, or building a home, or mentoring youth, or whatever it was, that was a big passion of mine. And at a pretty high profile church at the time, and getting opportunities that were way beyond my pay grade. Um, like, just because the guy that was leading the thing, had huge opportunities and a well-known international presence. And so he'd send punks like me to go speak places and do this and do that. And I was, proud of the opportunities. And I think I made good on it. But anyway, that was kind of the momentum. I say that just because it was big, it was
Yeah,
exciting, it was,
yeah,
fun. It was nonstop. In this church of 3,000 people, like I was a presence, like I was a well-known guy in that context. So there was some um, pressure in that way, and but it was nonstop. So I felt like, in some ways, as I think back on those days when we got together, Jess is her name. Uh, I was kind of, uh, maybe on automatic in some regards, like it just keeping up, trying to keep up with everything, and with the pressure, and it was all very exciting as well. She had just come to faith, and had come from a non-faith background at all, and some pretty tough background,
yeah,
and so she was in a new spot as well. So we got together both pretty starry-eyed.
yeah,
Not I think we knew each other as well as we knew to know each other at that stage. Um, and anyway, got married. Pretty soon after got married, um, I got an opportunity. I'd helped a guy come to faith, and he was a son of a billionaire, so he was born a millionaire and wanted to start doing something with his money and giving his money away. And I was the right guy to talk to about that. I happened to be the guy that met him and helped him cross the line of faith and get baptized and all that. But I also was just really well networked in the nonprofit sector, and I knew tons of people that were working internationally as well. So it was perfect for him to say to me one day, "Hey, I want to give my money away. What do you think I should do?" So, long story, really short, that ended up the idea was, "Oh, I'll start this foundation for you," which is just the vehicle by which he'd give money away. But he asked me to come and run that. So, took him around the world. We got involved in lots of different causes. Ended up settling in and working in the prison system, mostly in the state of California, running these leadership trainings. Now, um, that's when shifts started to happen for me. So I left the Christian spotlight, um, and like internal reality started shifting for me. Mostly in the sense that I didn't know how much that pressure actually was serving me,
Yeah.
because there was expectations of certain types of morality, and you got to, if you were to participate in certain types of behavior, you'd be kicked out, or at least it would be a big thing. And so now all of a sudden there's no spotlight and no expectations, and I'm alone a lot, and I'd been around people nonstop for several decades. And since I can remember, I've been like leader mentor guy. So I was always, even in college, I would just be meeting with people nonstop and had to put myself on a sleep regimen just so I remembered to sleep. Like, so I'd sleep from 12 to 6 and then get up and go again. And really what people would call busy. I was just active. I loved it.
Right.
But anyway, in this new role, a few things shifted. More alone, um, more money, 3 times as much money immediately, which is not I mean, I wasn't paid much at all at Mosaic. So, um, and a different type of ego, a different type of attention. Now I was representing a lot of money,
Yeah.
that wasn't my money, but now everybody wanted to meet with me, and there was a little bit of power in that
Yeah.
and influence in that that I don't think I gave enough time to really dissect and pay attention to.
Mm.
So at the same time, she started struggling. Um, she had shifted her career and took a leap, and that was harder for her than she thought it would be. Um, so my career, at least optically and opportunistically, and I was going up. Like,
Yeah.
it was cool, and I dug it and was digging it. Was liking every aspect of it, and her internal world and external world started tanking. Like, she went into a pretty good depression, really apathetic about things, and put on a lot of weight. Anyway, just stressful. There started to become a gap between us. Um, Simultaneously for me, I for the first time wasn't in Christian leadership for a long time, and so I started drinking. I hadn't never had much of a drinking career up before that. In college, I was not the frat guy. And all of a sudden I started drinking. I was like, "Oh, this is cool," and enjoyed it. And then eventually, as the story goes for some people, it became more and more and more.
Yeah.
And I'm jet setting across the country and doing all this cool stuff and going to all these fancy dinners, and started to, I was going to say, lose myself. I don't know that that's the case, but it definitely didn't have a handle on how I was really doing.
Yeah.
And so I was busy, but now after other stuff. And she and I, Jess, who's a great, great person, we started growing apart.
Mm.
Um, and I don't think we knew it as much at the time. I think it just kind of seemed a little bit like normal. But anyway, long story short, the drinking continued. And then, um, I don't know how many details to share, but there was a time that I actually went and traveled to the Middle East for a couple months, and that was really lonely for me, and a really big identity uh, struggle for me, only in this way that I was finally had all the time in the world. I was a nurse before that, so I was actually taking care of a member of the uh, Qatar royal family. And with all the time in the world at my hands, I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to journal. I didn't want to read the scriptures, all this stuff that I'd been selling forever, and didn't have time for it before. When I had the time, I realized I don't want to do any of this stuff.
Mm.
So it was a identity crisis for me. Like maybe I'm full of it. Maybe I've been lying this whole time. Maybe I don't actually believe. Maybe blah blah blah. All this kind of crisis of faith and crisis of identity.
Was this the
So it came,
first time that that crisis like really hit you?
I
Like,
think
right?
so. Yeah, I think so. At least at that level.
Yeah.
And I was really isolated there. So when I came back, that's when actually the drinking kicked up and kicked in, and my relationship to the church shifted. And there was some disappointment there in the transition and how that happened and where the relationships were afterwards and who shows up for you and who doesn't and kind of, felt like I was in the middle of nowhere and maybe the whole thing was a sham. And anyway, there was a lot of that. And so with that came drinking. Eventually, with that came attention seeking
Yeah.
from other women. So started slowly as things do and flirting here, da 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 da. And then there was a one night when I was out. Must have, I was alone at this concert. I don't think that was on accident.
Yeah.
So anyway, had my first fling, my first one night stand with a stranger. And with that, there had been some illicit massages that had been happening. I don't remember timeline now when that all started, but that all just kind of getting sexual attention and pleasure from people that weren't my wife. So, i.e., committing adultery.
Yeah.
Um, and then uh, there was enough of that that felt great, and so I doubled down. And if I'm all in, I'm an all in guy. So it was a lot, and there was tons of lies, holding money away, keeping money to myself, and not bringing it to family to fund these what became a very addictive lifestyle. Really, really spending a lot of my time and energy. I just had my first son at that stage.
Yeah.
Would stay up late, messaging people late at night, and so it was really dark. It was
Yeah.
dark for me. It was pretty cold at home. I had a lot of stuff I was covering up, and so I had this double life thing. So to fast forward the story a little bit, I mean, eventually, um, I was drinking all day. So eventually, I crashed a car,
Mm.
and that was the wake up call that I needed. I'd already that morning I'd been to an AA meeting because my my wife had caught me in a lie. I'd lied to, I was coming home from work, but I stopped at the store and grabbed some booze and was hiding that, and she knew I was because she was tracking where I was on her phone, and I lied to her about it, and I copped to it, and my negotiating chip was I'll go to an AA meeting. So I'd gone that morning. It was a Tuesday morning, and then just had my regular Tuesday. Drank all day that day. Went out and played volleyball. Drank at night afterwards after volleyball with the guys. But on my way home, like looking at my phone, finding a podcast to listen to, crashed a car. Got arrested for that. So that was the breaking open.
Yeah.
Like okay, and I knew it. I mean, I needed it, and I would I've said before, it's kind of poetic, but it's like when I went to that AA meeting, it's like my soul took a deep breath and thought, oh, because I shared my story there in tears.
Yeah.
And these guys, clapped and, they didn't run away. They knew it and they felt it. They'd been there before. So I had an experience that morning that was really transformative that honesty is the road to salvation. Um, at least the first step, not like behavior modification, like getting real
Yeah.
and confessing. And you actually come alive, you don't die. Because I think that's the lie, I think, is that if I tell the truth, I'll die.
Yeah.
And so I have to lie to keep up this thing I'm calling life, but it wasn't. So anyway, that started a whole new process. That was on a Tuesday night to Wednesday morning. On Friday at work, Jess called me and said, is there anything else you need to tell me or something like that? Because she had known. I had once made a mistake in my con and sent her an email from one of my private email addresses and then lied about it and tried to cover it up, but she knew.
Yeah.
And she, it's one of those things that, it's one of those things you don't want to know, so she'd been living with that. And there've been a few situations like that I'd covered things up and not well.
Yeah.
So she was brave enough to call me and ask, and I was in that moment. I'd had freedom for like 2 days from drinking and was really honest and was going to like a couple AA meetings a day and needing that and wanting that, and was done drinking. And I was going to do whatever it took to stay sober. Well, when she asked me that question, I knew it was a time
Yeah.
to just say yes. There's a lot.
Yeah. It was like the moment of, am I fully gonna dive into truth, or again, I'm gonna keep covering this up?
Right on. Yeah, because I knew my days were numbered, um, and I was just desperate for help.
Yeah.
And I liked what I was feeling over those 2 days with like being honest. So that began the journey. That began the divorce journey. So I'll try to be faster at the story. So anyway, we started talking. Um, right away, I don't know why. I think it seemed to me like kindness. I packed a bag and gave her some space. I don't know if she asked me to do that or if I was advised to do that. I don't remember. It was all pretty much a fog. But I gave her a little bit of space, but I never lived in that apartment again. I packed a bag that day and went and stayed at a friend's guest house and started this 9 month journey in the divorce process. We went to a counselor that was, I guess, well known in the sex addiction community. His process was to do a very thorough inventory and tell all the details. I think his view, which did not happen, is that then the person, his this is all just his language, that the person then can stop being traumatized. They know all the details, and then their nervous system can calm down. That was not the case, but that's what we did. So we went through this long process where everything was documented, all the details, every single detail from all my so. And then I went to a lie detector, whatever person, whatever they call that, did that, like read the thing, asked me questions. Am I lying? That's what her request was, and I was willing. And at that stage, I I knew our marriage was dead. It had been dead for a long time. Um, I knew that I didn't want to go back to anything we'd had before, but I also knew that I had said yes, and so I'm here to do my part in reconciling as much as I can. Like 100%, I'm in. And what's new is requiring the same from her. That was new. Uh, because I was the villain in the story and she was the victim in the story. But now if we're gonna give a second swing, she's got to forgive and I've got to forgive because there's a bunch that I'd been holding on to and resentment and all these things. And she'd have to come to the table as well. So we anyway went through this process of me confessing everything, and it was tough. It was ugly and
Yeah.
hurtful and gross and not a lot of great memories. I mean, if I were to recount some of those dark nights, it was not pretty, how bad it gets. um then once we got done with my part of the process, her response to that was, fuck you, I want a divorce. My response in that moment was, well, I don't want one. um but in the meantime, a business partner left and fueled her resentment. um and everybody, all the friends had left. I mean, quote unquote friends, like especially this faith community. So I've got a lot to say about that, which we'll save for another podcast.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, I was really alone, which I had earned. Right? It's not like I'm the victim of the story. I had behaved my way into that. Um, but some of it really surprising, and she wanted to be done. And I had let her run the show for all those 9 months, and whatever she wanted, I was in, which meant that I only got to see the kids, I think, every other weekend, and it was all supervised and okay, whatever it takes. We had just had our second child at that point. Charlie was in diapers.
Yeah.
So, anyway, once she was serious about divorcing, I was serious about getting my kids back. So I actually was the one that filed for divorce, because was wanting a divorce and not letting me have the kids back, no,
Yeah.
no, it's over now. I'm gonna have my kids back. I mean, I was already 9 months sober at this point. Had transitioned, started a new company, was in a good spot, lost a lot of weight via your help with Optavia. Or not your help, somebody else's help.
It's all right.
Another one of those programs.
I know.
But anyway, I was in tip-top shape and I wanted my kids back, and so I filed for divorce. Um, and we went through that
Oh,
process.
just to clarify, because this is new information for me. So the 9 month was a process of trying to. You knew that the marriage was over, but yet you were willing to go through that whole process in order to like heal the marriage, or is it like to just be more in a place of like surrender of just
Yeah,
what is needed in order for me to be at that point like able to be around my kids, or is it like
I didn't know if that we'd get a divorce. I know that that previous thing we call the marriage was a
gotcha?
corpse. It was dead. I was in it to be fully responsible. Now that I was going to be committed and be responsible and honest, I was in it for myself, really. And for her and for everybody involved, but really as an expression of my own integrity that I'd put back together. And that's the ironic thing is once you're honest about your dishonesty, you're honest again.
Yeah,
So I was really committed to getting clean and being real.
yeah,
And I knew that would be probably good for her to hear all that.
yeah.
And so I didn't know that if at the end we'd take another swing. I did know that I was committed to it, even though there were parts of her and parts of the marriage that were very disappointing to me. Um, but I did, but the stakes were higher because she would have had to own her stuff too. I wasn't going to be the one that ruined her life. That whole narrative, not living under that shame and guilt and all that. I mean, I'll take responsibility for my choices that I made. Nobody else made them. I made them. Um, but she would have to forgive for us to stay together, and she'd have to own her side of it as well, because it's not like it's a one-sided thing. It was like definitely contribution, not responsibility, but contribution on her side that she didn't and never has, and I don't think she ever will. Maybe she's examined that privately, but never had a conversation with me, never sought any forgiveness from me with anything, which is normal
Yeah.
for humans. But um, anyway, we never got to those conversations. Anytime we got through all my stuff, she was not willing to talk about us or not willing to talk about her, which
Yeah.
is once again human and fine. Um, so that's what that was. So then I was out on my own. Um, what do you want me to talk about next? Like
Well,
kind of
so you filed. So the moment you file, you're making a decision. Specifically, it sounds like it's a lot more driven for having my kids back.
100%, a
So
hundred percent.
take me through
It
that,
was,
like that process of okay, I'm the person that obviously did all this stuff. You've taken 100% responsibility and ownership, and you've walked through a 9 month process of full disclosure, 100% accountability, meetings. I mean, all the stuff that I know what that was like, and many times we were in that same journey and same process, and one of the reasons why I have so much respect for you is because of your vulnerability and your willingness to go 100% in, just like you did when it was on that side of Adrian. You're 100% in on this side of
yeah,
Adrian, and that's where I know, like I've from a distance and also from up close been able to see your journey of transformation and
yeah,
journey of healing and recovery and of honesty and truth. And it's a learning process, obviously, but yet the one thing that I admire and that I'd love to even just kind of hone in on, because it's the one thing that I wish I would have done, to be
mm,
fully honest with you, is know how to fight. And obviously, our kids were at different stages of life and
hmm
different age of responsibility and of awareness and knowledge. But man, like your commitment towards your kids and that diving into being the father, being a presence, being a bear
Yeah.
was impressive. Where I, I can see and I know of many men that that's where they bail.
Mm. What do you think? What do you think guys bail?
I think guys bail because they're afraid and they've either never known how to really step into that, you know, that calling or that responsibility, or
Yeah.
they've had poor, examples of other people that have done that, or their own failures from their fathers. But they're especially when primarily the women are the ones that are taking care of the kids. They don't know how, especially if they're really young. It's like, man, I don't know how to do that, and
Yeah.
that's not my role, and I'm the breadwinner, and so it's just a lot of they make up a lot of excuses. I think make up a lot of
Yeah.
excuses, and then don't fully step into that area of responsibility. A lot of times, like I said, just fear of the unknown. They don't know
Yeah.
how. They don't know how.
I get that. I get that. It is very vulnerable. I mean, I remember being a single dad's no joke. I mean, women are just better at like creating a community and they come to the rescue and there for support and dudes just don't do that
Yeah.
as freely and as
Yeah.
commonly, if that's a
Yeah.
word. Like they don't. It's not. That's not as common to really circle together around a dude. I think probably the church does it better than anybody than any organization does. But because that's kind of baked into the culture of community and that word's used like all the time. But yeah, um, yeah, I only filed because I met with a lawyer and he said, if you want to get your kids back, you have to get on offense. You can't, you've been playing, not even playing defense. I've been just doing whatever she asked. She's not going to give them back to you. And so you got to make the decision now how much you want to be involved in your kids' lives. And that was, I don't, I mean, that was never a question for me. I loved being a dad. I think of all the things I do in life, I think being a dad is one of the things I do the best. I just dig it for so
Yeah.
many reasons.
Yeah.
I have a great dad. There's aspects of me that he and I aren't similar in many ways, so I can father in some different ways than he could, just even had the ability to or the interest to. Like I'm a talker and I just want to talk through everything and I want to understand everything and I want to, know what someone's really going through. I mean, even my dad was just in town and my brother's going through a hard time and his line was, if he wants to talk to me about it, he'll call me and talk to me about it, which is just his view, right? That, uh, if they bring it up, we'll talk, but I'm the other side. I'm gonna call and say, hey, how's it going with that thing? Let's
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just dig it and shaping a young mind
Yeah.
and hopefully, I mean, as a father, you like evolve. You give your kids the stuff you never got or the things you long for and wish you had. That's what you get to go give, and that's part of the redemptive process. And that's how we grow as a society and as a family. So I wanted my kids back, and I'm of strong conviction that men, not the only one here that has this, but they need a father.
Yeah.
People, need a father. If in a mother in a solely mother-led house, it's very lopsided. Not anything wrong with women. They're just crafted the way they're crafted and can provide, that. And some of them provide that very well.
Yeah.
But if they try to play both roles, I mean, similarly, if it was just a father, the kids would probably be under nurtured,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
Um, but if it's just a mother, they're going to be probably over nurtured. And anyway, I
Yeah.
have lots of other opinions, but it won't go so well. So I really committed to being in their life. And no matter, I mean, I'm not gonna make them pay the price for my sin.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna even be ashamed of it, live in shame about it. Like, even I've started those conversations come up, they've come up, they don't come up very often, but like what happened with you and mom and
Mm.
I'll, they're still young now, 10 and 8 now. So I have shared honestly about, the version of the story changes as they get older, like it gets to be more
Yeah.
distinct. But, and she at times like shamed me to them.
Mhm.
And she felt bad about it when she did. Actually, one of the times I remember she called me to tell me that my boy had asked her a question, and she'd answered it what I would say pretty irresponsibly. And
Mhm.
I took that very seriously, and I was very angry.
Yeah.
And we sat down, and I think Scout was 5, so it didn't matter. I don't think he even remembers the conversation, but I was not going to live under her shame story about me and how much I had ruined her life or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, they need I needed to be involved. They needed me to be involved.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's why I filed so that we could start the process of me getting my kids back because she wasn't going to let me. And part of that, was she was scared
Yeah.
because I'd been a reckless hedonist. And so what am I going to do? And she chose not to be close enough to see my transformation. Like she didn't really know for sure I was sober and I'd lied to her thousands of times. So anyway, I understand it, but she could have gotten close and found out, and she didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And there's strategy to that as well. If you want to like play the victim,
Yeah.
you don't need to. If the villain gets recovered, but you like being the victim of the villain, you better not go find out
Yeah.
because then you got to change yourself. And that's just human, not just her. But anyway, yeah, that's why I filed. And I don't regret that at all.
Yeah.
Any decisions I make for the sake of the kids, I think as a marriage, if you have children, they come first.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't think you give up your life for your children. You need to have a vibrant life. But if you're responsible and your kids are young, you need to really prioritize their experience. Um, so, yeah, that's why I did that.
That's great.
And it was tough. It was tough. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Um, because partially because I was still working to kind of do what I could to help heal the damage that I had caused. And I knew it was going to throw her in crisis, which it did.
Yeah.
Um, but she was being selfish. So you don't get to do that when the kids pay the price for that. So that's why I felt like I had to.
Gotcha. And with that, one of the things that from a distance I've been able to see is that there has been, uh, at least from what I can see on social media and stuff like that, a
Sure.
very amicable relationship as parents in the lives of your kids. Uh,
100%.
how,
100%.
how did that?
Yeah, yeah. When I speak of it, I naturally like we were never vengeful.
Mhm.
So we never, and people can do that, like a lot of people do that, where it's like it's cruel and it's a game and you're trying to tear the other person down and you're kind of spilling your resentment and all over the children and using them as pawns. We never did that.
Yeah.
And partially, what helped me is I was in recovery, so um, there wasn't room for that, and I was committed to staying sober. So you got to like keep yourself clean, keep yourself God connected to a higher power, and doing good shit. You want to feel better about yourself, do good things, like do esteemable acts, they say. So and I wasn't in any place to want to make her pay at all because once again, I care about the kids. And if their mother's in shambles, that's not good for my children. So it was always for the kids. So I want to be kind and generous. And I paid her a lot of money and took care of her. Why? Because it helps. And if she's helped, it'll help the kids. But we were tentative towards each other. We didn't trust each other very much in the beginning, but we were all above board, and communication was pretty good, pretty sterile, and like just kind of back and forth details about the kids for a long time. And we didn't really have any heart to hearts at all. Um, that wouldn't happen until years later. Um, and we still haven't gone back and talked about it again, like that season of our lives. But over time, at the time, my thought was, okay, she's a coworker that I'm working with. That's how I thought about her. It's like she's a necessary coworker. Our job is raising these children, so I better play well with my coworker. That was
Yeah.
kind of the framework that helped me. I don't have to love her. I don't have to like her, but we're doing a job together. So, and we're going to be doing it for a long time. So everything I can do to be generous and to be thoughtful, but also not be a doormat. I don't owe her shit. You know, it's like, that's not the way this works. Like, meaning like I'm paying off some kind of debt.
Exactly.
You know, I'm debt free. Like, if she chooses to forgive me or not is up on her. I've forgiven myself and I've forgiven her and I'm clean. So if she wants to be in resentment, that's her own pain. That was my view of it. So I wasn't like busy trying to make it okay. No, she had the opportunity to make it okay. She didn't want to.
Yeah.
So there it is. All good. And I was good because she didn't want to like take any responsibility. So I didn't want to be with her anyway, or either, you know, because I wasn't gonna stay that way where she was the saint and I was the sinner in the relationship because we're both. So anyway, I saw her as a coworker that I was appointed to work with, that God had appointed us to work with, and that's my job, is to be the best coworker I could be. So I used to write GHG on my thumb every day in pen, which was an acronym for it comes out of the AA Big Book where it says we pray something like we pray daily that our lives would not be full of um, self-pity, dishonesty, and self-seeking motives. And so I thought, like, what's the positives of those things? Not to pray that those don't happen, but what do I want to live? So it became GHG, grateful, honest, and generous. And every day for like 2 years, I would write it on my thumb just as an anchor for me about who I was going to be, no matter what's going on. Grateful, honest, and generous. And uh, so that's how that sustained over time.
Mm.
Because you know, grateful. I'll start with whatever's here is a great starting spot.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, whatever's going on, even if it's freaking hard, even if the whole world left me, which most did,
Yeah.
and you know, okay, here I am. I get to rebuild. This is resiliency training. I would just talk to myself like that, and so grateful and honest. Honest was probably the hardest one for me, just because it was so mysterious. Meaning, like I'd been undervaluing myself for a long time. There's obviously honesty with other people, but that's pretty black and white. What was not black and white is me really getting connected to my own experience and what I really wanted and what I really needed and what was really going, like what feelings were. You know, I was just a charge through, make it happen, go, go, go guy. And so I started a really thorough journaling process in that, I journaled at times, but it was usually kind of bullshit. And I was always scared people would read it. So I would never be that honest. But I started getting really honest in my journaling about what was happening. So every morning got up at 5:30 and would journal before the kids woke up um, when I had them. And then generous is apparent, like be the giver. Wherever you're at, just be the giver. Be there for people. And if it's financial or if it's just emotional or whatever, just be there for the people. So that was the oil in the engine for me, is those three pillars during that really hard time. And I had to forgive a whole bunch of people because I was really, I had behaved my way into the mess. Yes, that's true. And most people had run for the hills, which was disappointing,
Yeah.
and felt really abandoned. And I was left, and I'd earned it once again, but yet people can forgive whenever they want to, and most people didn't want to. So
Yeah.
I never knew how much there was fueled from her, or just fueled because people were insecure or didn't want. I was in a place of authority, and I had uh, lots of trust and respect that I had shattered.
Yeah.
So
But
um,
it's tough and challenging, and man, that really irks me. Just
yeah,
because it's the message in that environment that we serve in and that we are part of is, you want people to be fully honest. You want people to come and own up their life, and when they do,
you make them pay. Yeah.
mhm, instead of actually showing what genuine grace and love and forgiveness and walk through it with others.
You know, what I saw is there's a handful of people. You'd be on this list. We didn't have that much interaction, um, and maybe because of the Jagged affiliation or whatever. Um, but you'd go on this list. There was a handful. Only one, two other people come to mind that were immediately with me. One of them's now my business partner, Dan Takini. He was my first call.
Yeah.
When I told Jess, yes, there was a lot going on, I left work and broke down and called Dan, and he wept with me. He was surprised. He'd been close to me, and I'd conned him, and it takes a lot to con Dan. I was very good at lying and hiding. And another guy, Octavio.
Yeah.
And what I found was people that have suffered really well
Understand.
aren't scared of other people suffering. They actually know it, and they know how to be close to it without wearing it. And they know that there's not much to say. It's just presence, like I'm with you.
Yeah.
And there's several other people that come to mind immediately that were the exact opposite, and that I would like to punch in the face,
Yeah.
but I won't do that. But it would be fun. I fantasize about it from time to time.
I hear you. Um,
So, and I was in the rooms of recovery. I just focused in on that. Like I went to, when anybody gets sober in anything, they suggest people doing 90 meetings in 90 days. That's kind of a part of the prescription is like go to a meeting every day for 3 months. And I went to like 120 meetings in 90 days, mostly because I wanted to stay sober. I didn't know if I could. I knew I wanted to, and I was committed to it, but I just knew I needed the safety of being in an accountable place. And it was a benefit that I'd been investing in people my whole life. So like being in that environment, it was a natural environment for me because it's a mentoring environment. That's so it's built into the program. So and if you're involved and of service, you're actually, it's easy to become a leader in those rooms and so I like that. So I got to put myself into that environment and make a difference with other people. And I'd call 4 or 5 guys a day, was sponsoring guys right away, and I got the concepts. It's a Christian program essentially, and I got the concepts rather quickly and liked it. So that's those two. So that mindset stuff I talked about, and then that practice of like being in healthy community. I think when guys get divorced, it's natural. There's some natural human tendencies, which is talk shit about the other people,
yeah.
which is get around your bros and like forget her, man, like that kind of stuff. I never indulged in any of that.
Yeah.
I think people do that and then they get bitter and then they start to justify acting out to try
Well,
to
that's what I
deal
was
with
going
their
to
pain.
say. It's like it's what are the things that, and I'm glad you're touching on that. Is like what are the things that are most commonly happen with the guys that lead them down to even deeper destruction.
Yeah.
In one of the most vulnerable, potentially one of the most vulnerable moments of their life. Yet, what are the things that can create a whole new transformation? And it sounds like being in a healthy community, being in accountability, being in recovery, being 100% committed to like learning how to be honest with yourself were like major tools. I love that GHG, grateful, honest, and generous, being those
Yeah.
pillars that really sustained your mindset. But then having those people like Dan and Oscar, in your life, and then through the recovery world, it sounds like other pillar of men and other people like a sponsor and other people inside where you are supporting and helping and seeing the courage of other people diving through a health process. But then also it sounds like you just had a different mindset of like, yeah, what other men do and intend to do, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, I of course stayed single in those 9 months, but then because I didn't know what was going to happen
Yeah,
with the marriage, but then I stayed single for a good while as well. And I think that was helpful because I mean, women can be a drug of choice, and just sexual, any dopamine
yeah,
can be a great escape. So I stayed clear of all those things. So I didn't go back to any of those vices.
yeah,
I think people usually when now, what's the phrase when the cat's away, the mouse will play or something. I think when guys get out on their own and don't have the eyeballs or the attention of their wife, who might at times be like a mother figure, they go back to adolescent behavior
yeah,
and they start playing the short game. So I think that the solution is to play the long game and to think about your own legacy and to think about your kids and think about that your kids are going to absorb who you are more than what you do.
yeah.
So what your priorities are and how you speak and how you hold yourself and your habits, they're going to see all that. And so I played the long game. Let me just take my time. I don't need anything right now except for my own integrity and, food on the table, that kind of stuff, and got my life as simple as I could make it. Like, I think
Mhm.
some guys go get extravagant, go make a ton of money and go do the Vegas thing or go do the whatever, or go on trips just to kind of relieve themselves. I really got stoic during that time. Like, I don't need anything to be okay.
Mhm.
Things like experiences and stuff to try to compensate for the deep pain that I was in. I just like, no, no, I'm going to sit with this pain and learn from it, and I don't want to miss this.
Yeah.
I want to learn all these lessons so that I could feel whole and so I could be of service to others as well. So I could really fully connect with other people that have gone through this process, that were going through the process, and I was maybe a little bit ahead of them in time.
Mhm.
So yeah, those are the choices that I made, and it paid off, man. It paid off.
Yeah, if you can see like not can see, obviously you can see it. If you could like give us like a word picture of like, man, this is where I was prior to, and this is where I am now. At least in this context of the divorce, like paint a picture, and then if you could go back to that person, that was in the beginning, and you could just give him these are the three most important things that I can of wisdom that I can impart on you or share with you. What would those be?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the beginning, the before and after is like during the divorce process.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I was scared, man. I was scared. I felt ashamed. Um, I uh felt really alone. I was really alone. Um, Disoriented is probably the right word for it as well. Like, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's what it was like before. And then when I got out of it, I felt really proud of myself. I remember deciding, even the night that I crashed the car, I remember on the legal pad I wrote, it might not get better, but I'm going to get better. I
Yeah.
remember writing that down.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me. And I remember saying to myself and saying to many others as a declaration that I'm going to hold my head up high here,
Mhm.
and I'm going to do everything I can to do it right. And what the chips are going to fall where they're going to fall. But I didn't make great decisions to get here, but I can make great decisions to get out of here.
Yeah.
And that was true for me and real. And I did it. And so by the end, I felt, even though it was hard to file for divorce, um, and I didn't like that. And, um, but I felt really proud of myself. I was still sober after going through all that shit that most guys would have crumbled under.
Yeah.
The amount of pressure and having to learn how to be a single dad and getting left by a business partner and getting left by all your friends. I mean, those are all great reasons to go out and drink and fuck around.
Oh yeah.
But I didn't, and so I felt really proud of myself. I felt really strong.
Yeah.
I felt like I had been, and felt like I'd been through the fire and I'd been tested. And I would always say to myself during that time, thank God I'm me,
Yeah.
which is more of a declaration like I can take this. I can, and it's not like a self, like I'm so great. It's just like, no, no, I'm a warrior. I
Yeah.
am,
It's an
you know.
affirmation of who you are.
That's right. Like, they grew up on the football field, spent countless hours in a gym, had done a lot of crazy stuff that most people couldn't or wouldn't want to do. But I've been through a lot, and this was a culmination. It was all training for that.
Yeah.
And so I felt great at the end, and felt like I'd done right by my situation.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I would have changed. If I gave myself some advice, if I was talking to young Adrian as I was in the middle of that, what would I tell him? Um, I'd probably talk with him about forgiveness.
Mm.
I wasn't ever, even to today, I don't get as mad as I should be, in the sense that, like, I think it's just family of origin stuff. We just didn't talk about feelings very much.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't deal with your anger, whatever that looks like, you're gonna make the person pay. I mean, essentially, that's I think what the lifestyle was out of. It's like, okay, I'm feeling neglected, I'm feeling rejected, and so F you, I'm gonna go do whatever I want. And that all could have been, uh, it didn't have to get as dark as it did,
Yeah.
uh, if I had been more honest with my feelings.
Yeah.
So don't abandon yourself. That's the first thing.
Mhm.
Really be yourself. Even if it's ugly, be yourself. Listen to yourself. Like be with what's there and talk about it. Find a person and talk about it. Um, so that'd be definitely one piece of advice is let yourself be wherever you are. You don't have to stay there if it's not healthy, but at least, don't avoid anything that's going on. Number one. Um, Number two, these are some things I think I did okay at, but um, just go. An old sponsor of mine said, "Go where the water's warm."
Mhm.
I mean, I remember listening to what's his name, Paul Simon. What's the story? There's a song called "Still Crazy" after all these years.
Mhm.
You know that song? And anyway, in the second verse, there's a line that struck me, almost knocked me over when I heard it. I mean, I heard the song a million times before, but in that time, um, the line was, "And I would not be convicted by a jury of my peers, still
Mhm.
crazy after." And I would just remember I heard that and I'm like, I just need new peers. I need to be around instead of these hypocritical Christian sons of bitches. I need to be around people that are real, that
Mhm.
have messed up and are here to talk about it without shame, without blame, without I need new peers. I would not be convicted by a jury of my peers. I need new peers. I'm being convicted by these people because they're idiots. But these people that have messed their lives up and are here to talk about it with joy, I need more of those people. So go where the water's warm. Um,
That's good, Adrian.
yeah. So, I don't know if there's a third one. What would the third one be?
But you also
Uh,
mentioned like don't avoid anything going on, like the
yeah,
avoidance of it. I think that's
yeah,
a good
yeah. So
having
I
that.
would just I would do that. Yeah, and
That's
take your
all.
time. Take your time would probably be the last
Yeah,
one. Take your
that's
time. Don't don't
right.
don't try to run out of it. Like savor it. Which is weird when you're suffering, but don't waste the pain.
Yeah,
Learn. It's a unique phase of life
yeah,
that most people want to escape, and so they do it again.
yeah,
And they find people to co-sign on their big sob story or to join them in their vengeance instead of finding some neutrality and deep responsibility. And you don't have to make anybody pay. If I'm responsible and
yeah,
I own it, not like blame or shame, but if I own it, and have some neutrality around it, you can actually still love the person that you're divorcing. Like you can want the best for them.
yeah,
It doesn't mean you're a doormat and you give them whatever they want and need,
yeah,
out of some kind of recompense or whatever the word would be, out of some like you owe them. But you can be generous because that's who you are,
yeah,
and you'll feel good about yourself instead of trying to find ways to validate yourself or to excuse yourself. So it's a beautiful time to begin to craft the person that you want to be. It's a perfect time for that because you're fully disassembled. It was like obliterated. You're building yourself back up like one block at a time. You get to make all these choices about who am I going to be now?
yeah.
And I've found that like my willingness and ability to talk about my pain and loss actually has been a great connection point to people. You
Absolutely.
and people that might judge me still, it's like I just don't have time for them. That's fine. Go ahead. Get out of here. I'm not interested.
I
So
love that. I love that. It's like that's when I'm instead of seeing like this is the moment where I'm most vulnerable and destroyed. It's like, oh, this is the time where it's like everything's crumbled, but now we get to rebuild.
yeah,
Think of it
yeah,
like a Lego set, like that is like, oh, it's crumbled down. It's like, okay, but now like I actually don't want it to be look like this. Now I
mm-hmm.
actually can design a new thing that I want to build, and I get
Right
to
on.
build something new, and it looks totally different, and it can be totally, you know, a new creation, a new imagination, a new possibility.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome, man.
Awesome. Well, thanks, buddy. Thanks for the combo.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to honor our time. I want to thank you for, you know, just being willing to share and connect.
Sure.
Um, really, really gained. I mean, I'm gonna re-watch this a lot to kind of get a lot of the nuggets. You obviously have a lot of stuff that you throw out, and I can't write it down fast enough. But
Yeah. Well, and if you ever down the road, if you ever wanted to have a round two, just let me know. Here for it.
absolutely, yeah. And if you know of guys that are in that journey process that are looking, for somebody to guide them and coach them through this, I know this is what you guys do and stuff like that. But just know that this is something that I'm really
Sure.
passionate about.
We could do a whole second one about my second divorce. That's a whole different
I was
conversation.
gonna say,
So
yeah, I want to get part two because I know that that one's a different journey.
it's very different context. So anyway, here for you, man. Thank you. Love you.
All right, love you too, Adrian. Blessings,
All right.
brother.
See you, buddy.